put the record. Okay, so in today's session, Anjani, so we will discuss on the agile methodology. So in the previous session, we had a walkthrough on the waterfall model and how the waterfall model is going to work, and then what are the disadvantages and advantages of using the waterfall model. So in that, we mentioned like what will be the disadvantages, what are the disadvantages of the waterfall model will be considered as the advantages or as the reason behind implementing this agile methodology.
Yeah.
Okay, so now if you see here, so it gives that Agile is also a software development methodology like waterfall model. So where it gives a direct link between the developers and the users. So you see here the developers and the users are nothing but the business users who are working at the client place. So earlier in the waterfall model or till now, whatever the scenarios we discussed, so we never mentioned like there will be an interaction with the developer and user. So there will always be a particular person which is called as a BA who will be involved between the developer and the user. So BA will be communicating with the users, and he will take the required information that need to be updated in the document or that need to be shared to the team. And after getting that required information, the BA will give the required details or any queries that has been raised from the dev or QA teams. So now in the Agile, we will be having a direct link between the developers and users, where a developer can also interact with the business user, because the methodology or the process itself designed or organized in such a way that whatever the whenever we have the part of requirements discussion happens in this particular model, so there will always be an interaction with the team. So when I mention the team here, say it is a combination of dev, QA, UIDs, excuse
Okay.
me, designers or whatever it may be. So all these different terminologies, what we use it for the respective teams, in Agile we will be calling them as a team.
Okay.
So the other one is like in the waterfall model. So we will not accept any change in the requirement in the middle of the project. And also we will start working on the project once all the requirements are defined for the particular project. That is, only once the design phase is completed, then only we will move to the implementation phase. So once all the requirements related to the project are documented, then only we will start working on the development phase. That is what has been the model of waterfall is having. So now here in Agile, so we will accept the any changes to the requirements will be allowed, but the change in the requirement will be added into the product backlog. So backlog
Okay.
is nothing but always keep in mind when we talk about the specific word called as a product backlog, it is nothing but a set of requirements. Backlog is nothing but a set of requirements for a project that need to be developed.
Okay.
So it is also based on the requirements will change, as there is no need to invest. I mean, for the agile model, so we will allow the users to have the changes related to the requirements, but we will not the I mean the size of the team. I mean the team will not be varied, like any other additional resources will not be included. So it will be like the same team who is going to work on the changes related to the requirements as well.
Okay.
And the third one is like all the initial requirements visioning is done to clarify the project scope, and we will have the effort required to deliver the software is produced, and requirements are elaborated as needed based on the constant prioritization. So once, even though we have the list of requirements defined by the project, defined for the project, so we will implement the certain requirements based on the client prioritization. So whatever the in the set of requirements R1 to R10, if the client mentions like R1, R4, and R6 are the major requirements which need to be implemented in the first phase or in the first release. So we will take those as the priority. We will prioritize those requirements, and those requirements need to be those three requirements need to be developed in the first phase. And
Okay.
then the inspect and adapt approach is to development greatly reduces the development cost and time to market. So inspect and adapt is nothing but so when a particular requirement, say in Agile methodology, we will calling the requirements as a user stories. So when a particular user story is delivered, so the client as the we have the continuous interaction with the business or the business users. So they will see the functionality of the requirement, and as they closely work on, as they closely inspect the requirements, so whatever the changes that are related to the particular functionality or any change in the functionality can be identified in the earlier phase itself. So that whatever the change in the particular requirement, so they will be saying like this requirement needs to be an additional functionality needs to be implemented. So what we will do is like we will be taking that particular requirement as a CR, which is a change request, and then that particular CR, well, it's also for the particular CR also we need to have a user story. So
Okay.
don't worry about the words terminology of user story. So user story is
Yeah.
nothing but in Agile it's a simple requirement.
Okay.
Okay, and this is how the Agile will work. Like when we have the requirement defined, so we will start working on the analysis and design, which is nothing but here we will not prepare any requirement documents like BRD or FRS. So we will be preparing the user stories here. And once the user story is done, I mean, is completed, which indicates that the user story is ready for the development and the user story can be delivered in the particular release. So that will be executed, and then we will go for the next requirement, and this requirement will be considered or implemented in the next phase, which will be calling as a next iteration. So it is an iterative process.
Okay.
And finally, once we have the set of like four or five iterations, we will consolidate all those requirements that are need to deliver in the four or five releases. We will consolidate all those five set of iterations, and then we will put a release here, one release.
Okay.
So why should we consider the agile, and what were the advantages that the customer is going to get when he use this particular model? So as we mentioned, the first point is the customer. That is the main advantage or the manifestation of the agile model, where the customer will be more actively involved in the development of the project, so that he will be given the high priority and he will be noticed to attend each of the different status that of the application where we having, like he can able to know what is the status of the current application or what are the set of requirements that are going to be delivered in the particular release. And you can see here in the previous slide, we discussed about the requirements can be considered in the part of iterations. So the changes related to the requirements will be accepted for each iteration after completing the each iteration part.
Okay.
So delivery is defined by the fixed time scale. So customer is assured of receiving some functionality by a fixed time period. So if you see here in this particular thing, like it states like the customer need not to wait till the end of the project delivery line, like saying like the project will be delivered only once all the requirements are developed and they are ready to uh, go for the go live. So what we will do here in Agile methodology is like whatever the set of requirements which we developed or released in the part of iterations, so those will be released or put into the production environment where the client can able to see whatever the part of the project that is completed till now. There is one more point, like more testing is done so that we have the better software quality is delivered. Why the involvement of testing is having the more give is like as we are delivering the set of requirements in the form of iterations. Say for the example, in the iteration one, we are delivering few requirements, that is R1, R2, and R3. And these three requirements, we have deployed them into the production environment. And now in the iteration 2, we are delivering R4, R5, and R6. So now when we are delivering the R4, R5, and R6 requirements, these three requirements in the iteration 2, so the first requirements, I mean in the first iteration, the three requirements R1 and R2, R3, so those functionality also need to be tested because this R4, R5, and R6 will have the dependency on the first three requirements that is implemented in the iteration 1. So is it clear, Anjani, till now?
Uh, I'm a little bit confused, I think.
Okay, let me put it into uh, an understandable way. Okay, let's take here. So this is a waterfall model. So what is the waterfall model is going to describe? So first thing is we need to draft all the requirements should be clear in the requirement phase. And now when you come to the Agile here, so here requirements are delivered in the form of iterations. So when we say iterations, iteration 1 is having the requirements of R1, R2, and R3. And then we'll have the iteration 2, which is we are delivering R4. R5 is the one requirement, and then R6. So this particular point is clear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then, so here we have the dependency on the requirements phase, and only one and only all the require if all the requirements are defined and drafted in the requirement documents, then only we will move to the next phase, which is next phase is nothing but implementation, or you can simply say it as a development phase. So, whereas in the agile model, so as we are considering the requirements in the form of iterations, so the team need not to wait to have all the requirements delivered from the business. or delivered from the client. So what the team will do here, so the development team will work on the requirements defined in the iteration one. Requirements in the iteration one. So they need not to wait until all the requirements to be documented or all the requirements to be delivered from the client. So dev team will work on the requirements in the iteration one, which is R1, R2, R3. So this is also one of the we are having. And then the next one is uh, client interaction will be less here as because and then here client will be actively participating in the development of the project, or we can say it as in all the artifacts. So this is also clear, right? The client interaction in this waterfall model will be less here, and in the Agile model, the client will be actively participating in the entire development of the project.
Okay. So in the waterfall method, like uh, client have no idea until the release time, right?
Yeah. So that is also one of the disadvantages. So what we will say is like client development of the project till all the requirements are developed and released in I'll mention released in production or go live. So you can say it like as a go live. So here, so the involvement of as the client involvement is, or we can say it like as the client is actively participating, he will he will know the status of the application, like we can say like what are the requirements that are developed, or we can also say like released till date. Okay, so these are all the major differences between the waterfall and the agile model. So now, is it clear here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And do we miss anything? Yeah. So here, um, testing. I mean, it doesn't mean that testing will not happen in the waterfall model.
Mm.
Where in agile model, more testing will be done
Okay.
because we are delivering the requirements in form of iterations. So when we are delivering the yeah, set of requirements in iteration 2. Then iteration 1, what are the requirements that are there in the iteration 1 also need to be tested.
Okay.
More testing will be done. So that is what we have discussed. And now you can see here the agile versus traditional software development is nothing but consider it as a waterfall model. So you can
Okay.
see what are the different parameters here we considered is like requirements, like for the traditional or waterfall model, the requirements are the fixed ones, where in the agile model, the requirements will keep on changing.
Yeah.
So, and in the coming to the time and the people, the resource management and the time management will vary in comes to the waterfall model or the traditional model, whatever it may be. So, whereas when coming to the agile, there won't be any change in the team size. And customer involvement, as we already discussed, like he will be involved in the waterfall model before the project development. That is, before the during the requirements phase, we will interact. I mean, the business analyst will be able to interact with the requirement with the client to get all the requirements related information and all the requirements to be documented. And after, in the sense like once the all the requirements are developed and moved to the production environment, or when we say it like it's a go live, then he will able to see the customer will able to see like these are the set of requirements or that is developed in the project. And in the agile, we will mention like in the as the client will be actively participating, so he will be knowing like what is the status of the application. And coming to the negotiable and testing, these are all the generic items like testing, feedback, and stages, requirements, design, code, test, and feedback. So all these are different stages here. Whereas when it comes to the agile, we can adopt any of the phase at any time.
Okay. Um, um, like in Agile, we
Yes.
can change the resources. I mean, customer.
No,
And we can.
In Agile, we will not change the size of the team. I mean,
Yeah.
the team remains fixed.
Okay. But if we want, like, we can hire some other resources, like, right?
Ye- Other resources in the sense like we need to get the mention in clear to the business like that I need the particular resource from this particular team or from the other team to develop or to help on the implementation of a particular on the functionality of a particular requirement. That we need to
Okay.
mention clearly to the client like I need an additional resource or additional team member from so and so project, because he we need the team member support to achieve the sprint goal or to achieve the requirements functionality.
Okay. Can we do that in the middle of the project, or
Yeah.
we have to say in the beginning of the project?
No, we will not be allowed in the middle of the project. So that need to be discussed in the whereas when comes to the Agile, you will see like when we move to the process here, then you will able to see like how the team will vary, and then what are the decisions that need to be taken before we start the sprint. Like
Yeah.
all the upfronts need to be identified before the sprint start date itself, before the sprint starts.
Okay.
So what are the different methods that supports the agile framework is Scrum, and then extreme programming, and then the adaptive software development, which is ASD, and then the DSDM, which is the dynamic system development method. So among these four methods, we will be using only the Scrum. And then the extreme programming will come into the picture where we have some like when we are implementing this agile framework to the multiple projects, or you can also mention like the extreme programming will come into the picture when we have the safe agile implementation. So agile implementation is different from the safe agile implementation.
Okay.
Okay, so now the actual thing comes into the picture here. Like we mentioned, the Agile framework, the methods that supports the Agile framework is Scrum. So Scrum is one of the framework that we will be, most of the companies will be using. So if you see, this is the high level design of how the Scrum is going to work. So first thing is the Scrum is a method or the process that supports the Agile framework. Okay. So in Scrum, these are all the different phases, or you can say this is the Scrum project development cycle in the Scrum process, or else in the Scrum methodology. So we have the product backlog, and we have the sprint backlog, and we have the daily Scrum meeting, or we can also say it as like a daily stand-ups. And then you can see the daily Scrum meeting will be, as we mentioned, it is a daily, so it will be a period of 24 hours. And then you can see 2 to 4 weeks is nothing but a sprint duration. As we discussed it, like the set of requirements will be released in the form of iteration 1, iteration 2. So here we will call them as a sprints here.
Okay.
And then, so in the, it means like we will be having a 2 week sprint. So in the 2 week sprint, we will identify what are the set of requirements that can be delivered, or as per the agile terminology, we can say that the requirements as user stories. So we will identify the set of user stories that can be delivered in the 2 week sprint. So then we will, after completing the 2 week sprint, I mean, at the end of the sprint, we can able to deliver some part of the product. You can see a potential shippable product increment. So it is not like giving the complete project here. It is giving a small uh, increment. The product delivery will be done in the part of increments here.
Okay.
So it's nothing but when we are considering it as a delivery or sprint release, it is saying like not a set of all requirements to the project. So we will giving whatever the requirements that are defined or that are set to be released in the sprint, which is a 2 weeks or 4 week sprint. So only those requirements will be delivered.
Okay.
In
So,
general,
like sprint is nothing but like two or three requirements combined together is
yes.
called a sprint.
So yeah, as we mentioned, like it's a iteration, right? So we are delivering the requirements in the form of iterations. Like so, we can like each iteration is a sprint.
Okay.
So each sprint is having the set of requirements that need to be developed in the sprint duration. So sprint duration is nothing but as in general, the agile methodology supports in the Scrum process. We will be having a 2 week sprint or a 4 week sprint.
Okay.
Okay. So this is how the Scrum sprint cycle is going to work. So we will be having the product backlog, and as you mentioned, like the product backlog will be having the list of requirements which are need to be delivered by the customer. So this is nothing but the prioritized list of features required by the customer. And then we will having the sprint backlog. So in the product backlog, say we if we have these particular consider this as a three blocks, like each block is having certain functionalities or certain requirements related to a particular module. So we will break down this particular requirement into set of multiple requirements, or we will call it as a multiple user stories, and we will consider these user stories to be delivered in the particular sprint. So what we will do in the sprint backlog, we will have the features to be done in this particular sprint. And we will split the requirement into smaller tasks.
Okay.
And then once we have the sprint, so we will, as we mentioned, like in the